G'day Jafffa Adventures, Terry King here. Welcome to the channel. I'm in the car heading to a seller's house to pick up a tub for the FJ45. So you want to see me carve up a brand new 79 series tub so that I can fit it on a nearly 50-year-old Landcruiser to allow me to get my exhaust system sorted out with my twin stacks to allow me to fire up the supercharged crate motor. If any of that sort of stuff interests you, stick around. Tub's home and in the shed, and she's a beauty. It's brand spanking new. As you can see by these bolts, nothing's ever been in the floor. I'd say they bought a new ute. It had this tub on it. They pulled the tub off and put a tray on it. I can't wait to get my angle grinder out and chop that thing all up. First thing I'm going to need to do is take these steps off because they're going to get in the road and they're actually going to be chopped off. I do note that Toyota has a couple of mounts here as well. So if all things go well, I should be able to shift that up to there eventually and still retain those. That's the goal. Here's the one side. Number two. Well, I was hoping for an easy fabrication job to move these up, and that's not going to be the case. I thought, oh yeah, I'll just use those two holes that Toyota provide. But in doing that, one, the step is a little bit too far out from the side of the tub. That's how close it sat originally. And two, that bracket doesn't sit on the proper side of that rail. So when we get around to fitting these steps again, it's going to be fabrication time. Now, what I'm going to try and do here is determine the center point of the wheel, which is very important to get the wheel lined up properly in the guard. That looks pretty good right there. Alright, I've got my little protractor and rulers out, and I've determined that that angle there and that angle there are identical. That means it'll be easy to find the center of this wheel arch. I'll run a line up here, a line up here, and then I'll measure between those 2 points. Equidistant is dead center. Okay, I've got my center line now. Now I'm trying to work out how much I've got to chop out of this tub. What I do know is it's 1100 from the front of the tub to that center line there. Now on the FJ45, from the front of the cab to the center line is 910. So if I chopped 190 mil out of it, that headboard would be resting tight up against the back of this here tub. So the question is, how much space do I want between the headboard and the back of the tub on the cruiser? Now this level is sitting on the mounts where the original tray mounted. So if I wanted the headboard to end right here where those mounts are, I've got to add an additional 70 millimeters onto my 190. That would give me 260 to chop out, but I think I'll probably give it an additional 10 millimeters forward, just so that I cover the front edge of those mounts there, which takes me down to 250 millimeters. I've got to measure off the back of the cab here, not off of here, because this starts to slope away. So in the real world, the headboard will be parallel to the tub at about this location. As we go further up, the cab peels away from the headboard. So if I pop the level on the tub, we can see here that that's pretty much level. And if I pop the spirit level on the headboard, that's pretty much dead level as well. What that means is that the headboard is at right angles to the tub. The reason that's important is I will get this part of the tub here parallel with the cab of the car. Then I'll know the headboard will be parallel, regardless of the fact that the cab starts to pull away. That's my plan anyway. So at the moment, my head's sitting at 250 millimeters. I'm going to remeasure this thing again, and possibly even a third time, just to confirm that 250. And of course the reason I'm doing this is so I can fit this twin stacks for the motor. So this pipe I've got here is 3.5 inch. and that level is where the front of the tub will be, and that gives me some good clearance on the cab of the Landcruiser as well. In doing that, that exhaust is not proud of the cab. It might look it in the video, but it's actually not proud, which is exactly what I'm after. So that 250 is confirmed. Now before I go and mark this up for the chop, I'll take that headboard off as a first step. Oh. That's got him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop out 250 mil out of the front of this. Then I'm simply going to take the front of this tub and shift that back to 250 mil. And as you can see here, it's spot welded on. So I should be able to drill these spot welds off, pull the end of this tub off, cut out my 250 mil, pop the front of the tub back on again, plug weld it, and Bob's your uncle. Sounds like a 5-minute job, doesn't it? I'm going to pull the spare tire holder off there just to get any of this excess weight out of the road that isn't going to be assisting me. Beautiful. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that 250 mil before I start drilling out any of the spot welds on here. And the reason for that is right now the front of the tub is perpendicular to that plane, and if I start drilling spot welds out, that might actually move forward or backwards a little bit. So I'll mark out my 250 mil line for starters. Now I'll get a piece of masking tape and run it along there and see whether the masking tape runs true or parallel. I'm going to use a big wide piece of tape so that I can't sort of bend it back and forth, if you know what I mean. That's pretty good. And I'm going to mark which side's my cut line in case I forget. Now I'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Now that I got both of those sides marked with the tape, go along and center punch each one of these spot welds. And of course the reason for that is I just want to make sure that my drill bit runs true when I start to drill these suckers. Okay, drilling time. Even when I get these spot welds drilled out, I think this is going to be a real pain to get off because there's some seam sealer poking out here. So that's actually going to bond those two panels together as well, which is going to be a lovely little challenge. Thank you, Mr. Toyota. Now I just got a regular drill bit and I'll drill a pilot hole into these spot welds. Now I'll use this spot weld drill bit to drill out the rest of the spot weld. You don't need to use these, you can use just a regular drill bit, but I've got these so I might as well. But these things are just like a little hole saw. They got a little pilot dowel in the middle and they just cut around the external surface of the spot weld and break your spot weld for you. I'll use that bit until I break all those teeth off, unscrew that sheath and spin it around and use the other teeth until you break those off. All right, we'll come back after I'm done drilling all these spot welds out because this is going to take a very long time. There's got to be, if I was going to guess, 50 spot welds maybe, along the sides, along the bottom, a couple up the top here. A lot of tedious work anyway. So you go enjoy your beer and I'll sweat it out. Okay, that panel is now free. You can see the gap moving in there. All those spot welds are drilled out. Doesn't matter if you drill through the panel or not, because obviously we're going to be chopping this inside panel off anyway. We just want these holes here so that we can plug weld them when we move the front of this tub back to our new cut line. So that side's finished. I'll go over and do the other side. And then after that, I got about 5,682 more spot welds to do inside of the tub itself. Awesome, thanks Toyota. While I'm in such a fantastic mood drilling out spot welds, I'll take these spare tire holders off as well. They're gonna have to be relocated because they're gonna get chopped off in my 250 mil chop. As predicted, my spot weld drill bit the dust, so now I'm just using a stepper drill. Got him. 2. So all those spot welds in the tray are drilled out on the top side now, and I'm just going along, levering with a screwdriver and just making sure that that floor is completely free. Because when I take this front panel off in this direction, if there's a spot weld that's still holding on, there's no way it'll come off because of that shear force. And I can see right here that spot weld's not been drilled through, nor is that one. So there's a couple of them that still need a little bit of work. If I sound a little bit odd, Jill just gave me some hot spicy Thai soup and I'm crying my eyes out like a baby. But it was beautiful. So I've just got a little scribe here and I'm gone along and just lifted up on the steel to make sure that all of those welds have broken. And they have, so that's good. All 5,000 of those are done. It looks like there's a Phillips head screw in this corner, another Phillips head screw in that corner. And if I take those out, I think the front end of this tub might come off. Oh, hang on, not yet. That is welded on both sides as well. So on this one, I think what I'll do is I'll get my cutting disc and I'll cut it right along here so that that flap can then be welded back up against this on this cut line here. And that is true on both sides of the front of this. Cutting disc won't catch that very back side, so I'll have to get a hacksaw blade in there, I think. That's it, we're through. There's one side. Got him. Sweet. All right, we got it off. Awesome. Now, I am so glad that I marked that line before I took that front cab off. Otherwise, I would have lost all of my reference point because it's not 250 mil from that edge to where I need to cut. In terms of the inside of the tub, as the grinder disc runs along here, it'll put a cut in the floor here, and it'll also do that over here, and then I'll just join that line up with that line on that side, and that'll give me my 250 across the floor panel here. Well, I must say I'm pretty stoked with that. And on that note, I'm gonna call it quits for today. Have myself a beer. See you tomorrow. Good morning, everybody. Time to get the angle grinder out. Before I do that, I'm gonna measure this thing one last time. So if I take that from the middle of the wheel arch to my cut line, we're looking at 850 millimeters. Come over to the car, 850 millimeters at the center line of our tire. Means the front of that tub is going to finish up about 60 millimeters from the cab. That will do me just fine. Now, just before I take into a $2,000 tub with my angle grinder, here's one more thing of note. The floor here finishes up about 30 mil short of the very end of the tub. So that means when I run my cut line down here, I've actually got to step the floor in about 30 mil to compensate for what we've got here. First things first, I'll run the angle grinder down the two sides. There we have it. The only thing holding that on are the spot welds running along the floor here. I'll do the exact same thing on the other side, and then we'll cut the floor. Now I've got my two cuts. I'll just remove my masking tape here. So that side's just flapping in the breeze. This side over here is flapping in the breeze. You'll note here that I've gone 10 millimeters longer on this top C-section, and that's because it's 10 millimeters past the edge of the tub here as well. Now my floor is 30 millimeters shorter than the end of this panel. There's the new end of my panel. So I've got to measure back 30 millimeters on both sides, run some tape across there, and that's my cut line. I measured here from the back of the tray to that cut line on both sides just to double check measurements, and they're identical. So 30 millimeters back from this cut line, and put us right there. Cutting time. Be good to me, baby. My disc is getting a little on the small side. So I need to cut that line all the way to the edge of this panel, but not nick that panel. That's gonna be tricky. Might dig that seam seal out of there. All right, I'm still working this out. So I'm gonna take this little panel off here to improve my visibility. But what I'm thinking is that I join those two cuts on an angle, and then once this is out of here, I'll be able to clean that up properly. Got no idea what these little hatches are for either. Now I got that hatch out of there, that's gonna make things a wee bit easier to join those two up. That's betterer. Okay, I'll see if I can clean this little triangle up now. Got him. Next thing I gotta do is drill out the spot welds on these braces so I can take these braces off. One down, one to go. Now the next thing I need to do is rebate the very front edge of the sides so that the headboard and front of the tray can slide over top of it. Now that rebate is 20 mil deep, and it's only on this major flat and a little bit here on the bottom, but it's not rebated here up on the top at all. So I got myself a bit of masking tape, which is 25 mil wide. All right. Get a pair of multi-grips and start rebating. I rebated. There must be some sort of fancy tool for this, I'm sure, but the old multi-grips work. Now I'll just de-wonkify the edge. Not that that's ever gonna matter because nobody will ever see that, but it's straight now. Okay, try that. Well, that wheel is just about center in that wheel arch, so that works. I'm happy with the gap between the cab and the tub, so that works. The tub is sitting pissed at the moment. It's sort of running down like this. And what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to notch that and notch that on both sides, and that'll lower the tub down a good 50 mil, which is what I would like to see. And then once I get that tub level, I need to hang a door, because on the door they've got that body line there, and I'd like that body line to line up with that crease in the tub. Right, tub's back off the car, time to weld up this headboard properly. I've gone through and I've marked each one of these spot holes with a bit of marker, so when I take this front panel off, I know where to grind to get rid of that paint so the weld will stick. Done that on both sides and up here on the bottom as well. Well, that was that little panel that was installed there. That's the end that I had chopped off. I think what I'm going to do is I'll cut and shut these before I weld the headboard on. They'll just look a little bit more finished than having this edge the way that it is. All right, I've trimmed that piece up there, cut out a nice hole for it to weld into, which will be right there. There's half of our little flap. This one will finish up on that edge, which means I want to cut it right about there. That will go there. Locate it with a couple of bolts. That one there. And weld up the gap. And there's our little flap. All right, after what seems like hours, because it probably was, of grinding and welding and grinding, I've got these two little plates finished. This is the left-hand side. That guy over there is the right-hand side. And you can see I've stitched in this panel here as well, which it screws to. So the only thing I need to do on these panels is put a little bit of bog on there so that it's nice and smooth, and that'll be that. In the meantime, I'll just hit that with a bit of etch primer to stop any rusting. I am happy with the way those turned out, and I do like the fact that these ribs here taper off like they did on the original factory one, rather than simply having a cut off edge. That just looks a lot more finished to me. Now I've got all my spot weld areas ground back, so I'm at a stage now, I think, where we can put that headboard back on and spot weld it in place. Now before I go and pop that headboard on, I'll put these two little spare tire cradles in place. Before I removed them, I marked which ribs they were on. So there, and there. They're 185 mil from this outside edge to the edge of the tub. And it looks good a spot as any. I'll mark where I've got to grind the paint off. All right, let's have a little bit of a reset and check in on where we're up to. The front of this tub is now ready to be welded in. I've gone along and I've primed the front edge of the floor because that's going to be difficult to get to. I've primed the front edge of each side. Again, a little bit difficult to get to. And I had to notch the front wall of the board here to clear the lip on this little area that I've welded back in. So we're ready to go. Let's fit up that front end for the last time and weld her in place. Now that's the level on the side of the tub, so it is dead level front to back, which means that the front of this tub needs to be absolutely perpendicular to the sides. And as you can see there, our bubble's a little bit off, not a lot, but a little bit. I either need to bring the top in or the bottom out. So what I'll do next is a lot of shimmying and shaking to make sure that I got that front completely perpendicular with the sides before I go ahead and hit it with the welder. So rather than chasing my tail back and forth, I've got that side perfect. I'm going to do a couple of plug welds in the side to hold it in place. Then I'll get this side perfect, and by default, the middle should be perfect. Last minute double check on my level, and it's spot on. So I'll run a weld here on the top edge, then I'll recheck my level again, and if it's okay, I'll do the very bottom plug weld. Double check my level, and it's still spot on. So let's plug weld that bottom. Excellent, she's still spot on. So now I'll just go over to the other side and repeat that process. Okay, now I'll check the level. Not that we can do much about it now because she's all welded home. That one is good. That one is good. That one is good. All right, I'll plug weld the bottom of this front panel and call her done. All right, we're looking inside of the tub here, and you can see that I've got that spot welded from the underside. It's all welded up fully on the right-hand side, and also all welded up fully on the left-hand side. I double checked my level, and that is all good. So now I can take the grinder, clean these welds up, and then hit that with a little bit of rust protection so she doesn't rust on me. And then we'll move on to the next phase, which I'm really not sure what I'm gonna do. Maybe the headboard, maybe the flares, maybe the little side step. Here's one thing I've experienced, and I'm not sure whether you guys share that same experience, but I've often found if I'm not exactly sure what step I'm going to do next, I just continue to work on what I'm doing, and oftentimes it becomes quite apparent. And this is a classic example. I've ground those welds off, just cleaning them up, and it's quite apparent to me now that I've got to put a little skim coat of bog over there and cover up those grinding marks. So that is the next logical step in this process. All right, mix myself up some Bondo here. One little tip with Bondo is don't mix it up on cardboard if you can help it, because the cardboard sucks in the oils out of the Bondo. You can get these, they're called an onion skin, and it's, I don't know, some sort of a coated paper, I guess, but it prevents the oils from getting wicked out of the Bondo. Bit of hardener, I just do a bit of a guesstimate on the amount of hardener that I need. Mix it all in until you get a uniform color, and then go down to your panel and start a spreading. All right, I think my Bondo's gone off enough that I can start to hit it with some sandpaper. I got some 60 grit here, just to take off the highs. Well, what I found out in that process is that the Bondo lifts off the cold gal paint. So, call that a fail. I'm gonna sand that all back to bare steel, and I put the Bondo directly on the bare steel. I always seem to have to learn these lessons the hard way. Is that just me, or is that everybody? I do not know. Well, after a fair whack of sanding, that's what I'm left with. Each of those low areas are filled up with the bog, and the high areas are obviously bare steel. And all that bog I put on the car, there it is. Now I'm ready to hit this with some epoxy primer, but before I do that, I thought I'd better just fit up the headboard in case I have to make any modifications to get that headboard to fit, and I have to do any grinding. Well, then I can hit it all with primer in one go. I know I do have to drill at least 2 holes for this headboard. Cool, so I don't need to do any additional mods to get that headboard to fit. Sweet! There's 2 bolts here that hold the headboard in, one here, and the same one on the other side, and on the inside, 2 more here. Now before I go and drill these holes, I gotta make sure that that headboard is sitting straight up. And again, to do that, I'm just gonna use my spirit level. That's pretty bloody close right there. So I'll drill the holes on this side, I'll button it up, then I'll go do the other side. All right, that headboard is all fitted up now completely. Check my level and she's pretty much bang on, so that's awesome. Now I'll dig out the epoxy primer and I'll shoot this area where the Bondo is and anywhere where I've got some bare metal. Now while I'm waiting for that high build primer to flash off, there's 2 things I gotta take care of. 1, I gotta mount these steps, and number 2, I've gotta mount these fiberglass replacement panel wheel flares. But you know what? I reckon we've done enough for this video. So until the next time, everybody, look after one another and keep the shiny side up. Bye now.